On the night of October 22nd, 1720, a 12-ton sloop called the William sat at anchor off Negril Point on the western tip of Jamaica. She carried 4 guns, 2 swivel cannons, and a crew of 14, most of whom were too drunk to stand. They had captured a Spanish merchant vessel the day before and had been celebrating since. Out of the dark, running without lights, came a sloop commissioned by Governor Woodes Rogers and commanded by a pirate hunter named Captain Jonathan Barnett. Barnett hailed the William. Someone aboard slurred back that they were English. Barnett ordered them to surrender. A single shot cracked across the water. Barnett responded with a broadside that tore through the William's rigging and brought her boom crashing to the deck. What happened next has survived 300 years because of how impossible it sounds. The crew of the William, including their captain, a man called Calico Jack Rackham, scrambled below deck and hid. Every one of them. 14 men, armed, experienced, and supposedly dangerous, crawled into the hold like cargo. 2 people stayed on deck. 2 people faced Barnett's boarding party, with pistols in their hands and cutlasses drawn. Both of them were women. One of them fired down into the hold where her own crew was hiding, killing 1 man and wounding 2 others, screaming at them to come up and fight like men. They lost. They were always going to lose. But the fact that they fought and that no one else did is the reason you know their names and have never heard of any other crew member aboard that ship. This is the story of Anne Bonny and Mary Read. Before we dive in, comment where in the world you are watching from, and don't forget to click subscribe. To understand how 2 women ended up alone on the deck of a pirate ship in the Caribbean, you have to go back to where each of them began. And their beginnings have almost nothing in common. Mary Read was born in London sometime around 1685. Her life started with a lie and never really stopped being shaped by it. According to Captain Charles Johnson's 1724 account, the only detailed source we have, Mary's mother had been married to a sailor who went to sea and never came back. She had a son by that marriage. The son died. Then she had Mary by a different man out of wedlock. The problem was financial. Mary's grandmother had been sending money for the support of the legitimate grandson. If she discovered the boy was dead and had been replaced by an illegitimate girl, the money would stop. So Mary's mother dressed her as a boy and presented her to the grandmother as the dead child. The deception worked. The money continued, and Mary Read grew up performing a role that had been assigned to her before she could speak, the role of a boy who had never existed. She worked as a footboy. She crewed on a merchant ship, and then, still disguised as a man, she enlisted in the British Army and fought in Flanders during the War of the Spanish Succession. By every account, she was a capable soldier, brave enough to earn respect from men who had no idea they were serving alongside a woman. In the regiment, she met a Flemish soldier, fell in love, and for the first and only time in her life, revealed who she actually was. They married. Their fellow soldiers, rather than being outraged, were reportedly so charmed that they collected money as a wedding gift. The couple left the army and opened a small inn called the 3 Horseshoes near the city of Breda in the Netherlands. Then the husband died. The war ended. The soldiers who had been their customers stopped coming. The inn failed. Mary Read, alone and without income in a world that offered a single woman almost nothing, did the only thing she knew how to do. She put on men's clothes again. boarded a Dutch merchant ship bound for the Caribbean, and disappeared back into the identity she had been performing since childhood. That ship was captured by pirates. Mary Read became a pirate. Not by choice, by the erasure of every other option. Anne Bonny's origin could not have been more different. She was born Anne Cormac around 1698 in Kinsale, County Cork, Ireland. Her father, William Cormac, was a lawyer. Her mother, Mary Brennan, was his servant. The affair caused a scandal that destroyed Cormac's legal practice and his marriage. He fled Ireland with the servant and the child, crossed the Atlantic, and established a new life in Charlestown, South Carolina, where he rebuilt himself as a planter. By the time Anne was a teenager, her father was wealthy, respectable, and intent on seeing his daughter marry well. Anne had other plans. According to Johnson, she had what he called a fierce and courageous temper. At 13, she allegedly stabbed a servant girl with a table knife. A man who attempted to assault her was beaten so severely he was confined to bed for a considerable period. She was not what the planter class of South Carolina had in mind for a proper young woman. She married a small-time sailor and sometime pirate named James Bonny. Her father disowned her. One account claims she set fire to the plantation before she left. Whether that detail is true, or merely consistent with everything else we know about her temperament, it has survived in the record because it sounds exactly like something Anne Bonny would do. The couple moved to Nassau in the Bahamas, which in 1718 was the closest thing the Western Hemisphere had to a functioning pirate republic. James Bonny became an informer for the colonial governor, Woodes Rogers, reporting on pirate activity in exchange for protection. Anne, surrounded for the first time by people who lived outside the rules she had spent her life breaking, found the company she had been looking for. She found it specifically in a man named John Rackham, known as Calico Jack for the bright striped fabric he wore. Rackham was charming, he was fashionable. He had designed his own Jolly Roger, a skull above two crossed cutlasses, the image that would become the most recognized pirate flag in history. He was also, by the standards of the Golden Age, a mediocre pirate. He took small prizes. He commanded small crews. He operated a sloop, not a frigate. He was not Blackbeard. He was not Henry Morgan. He was not even close. But Anne Bonny was not interested in scale. She was interested in freedom. Rackham attempted to purchase Anne from her husband. Divorce being effectively impossible, a man could sell his wife's companionship rights, and James Bonny refused. Governor Rogers intervened, threatening Anne with a flogging for abandoning her marriage. Anne's response was to steal a sloop with Rackham, gather a crew of 12 men, and sail out of Nassau Harbor on August 22, 1720, aboard the vessel that would become the William. She did not look back. The crew of the William included, among its 12 men, a young sailor who had recently been taken from a captured Dutch merchant vessel. The sailor was handsome, quiet, and competent. Anne Bonny, according to Johnson, became attracted to this new crew member and made her interest known. The young sailor turned out to be Mary Read. The revelation that the person Anne had been drawn to was a woman in disguise did not end their connection. It transformed it. Mary Read had spent her entire life hiding. Now, for the first time, someone else knew. Someone who understood. Because Anne Bonny had spent her own life refusing to perform the role the world assigned her. They were not the same kind of outcast, but they recognized in each other the same fundamental refusal. Mary had refused to disappear into the poverty that awaited single women. Anne had refused to disappear into the respectability that awaited wealthy ones. Both had chosen the sea. Both had ended up on the same 38-foot sloop. Calico Jack, reportedly jealous of Anne's interest in the new sailor, was told the truth as well. The secret held. 3 people on a ship of 14 knew that 2 of the crew were women, and nobody else had any idea. Mary Read, in her time aboard the William, demonstrated something that went beyond competence. She fell in love with a fellow crew member, a young man whose name has not survived in the record. When a larger, more dangerous pirate challenged him to a duel, Mary Read knew her lover would lose. She forced a quarrel with the same man, demanded a duel of her own, and killed him. She fought with a cutlass and a pistol on a strip of beach, and she won. She had killed a man to protect someone she loved, and she had done it in a world where her very presence was supposed to be impossible. The William operated in the waters around Jamaica through September and October of 1720. They took fishing boats, they took small merchant vessels, they stole provisions, rum, food, tackle. It was piracy at the smallest possible scale, conducted by a crew that was, by most accounts, more interested in drinking than in building an empire. Rackham was not a strategist. He was a man with a stolen sloop and a famous flag, coasting on reputation he had not fully earned. And then, on the night of October 22nd, Barnet came. The fight on the deck of the William lasted minutes. Anne and Mary, alone against a boarding party of professional pirate hunters, held the deck with pistol fire and blade work until they were overwhelmed. Mary, in a fury at the cowardice below, discharged her weapons into the hold, killing one of her own crew and wounding others. It changed nothing. They were taken, all of them. The trials began in November, Spanish Town, Jamaica. Calico Jack Rackham was tried on November 16th, found guilty, and sentenced to hang. Before the execution, Anne Bonny was permitted to see him. The words she delivered are the most famous sentence spoken by any pirate in the Golden Age, reported by Johnson and repeated for 3 centuries without losing a gram of their weight. Had you fought like a man, you need not have been hanged like a dog. That sentence is not anger, it is not grief, it is contempt from a woman who had fought for a man who had not. In a world that defined courage as masculine and submission as feminine, Anne Bonny stood in a prison and told the most famous pirate captain she knew that he had failed at the one thing his gender was supposed to guarantee. The inversion was total. Rackham was hanged on November 18th at Gallows Point, Port Royal. His body was placed in an iron gibbet cage on a small islet at the entrance to the harbor, a rock that is still called Rackham's Cay, where it hung and dried in the Caribbean sun as a warning to every ship that passed. Anne Bonny and Mary Read were tried on November 28th. Both were found guilty. Both were sentenced to death. And then both of them spoke 3 words that saved their lives. I plead my belly. Both women were pregnant. Under English law, a pregnant woman could not be executed. The court granted a stay of execution until the children were delivered. The irony is almost too precise to be accidental. The system that had spent centuries defining women by their reproductive capacity, that had denied them property, denied them legal standing, denied them the right to exist independently of a husband or a father. That same system now had to spare their lives because of the one biological fact it had always used to control them. Their bodies. which the world insisted made them unfit for the deck of a ship, were the only thing that kept them from the gallows. Mary Read never left prison. She developed a fever. Some accounts say complications from the pregnancy, others say a jail fever that swept through the cells, and died in April 1721. She was buried on the 28th. She was approximately 36 years old. She had spent her childhood performing the identity of a dead brother. She had spent her adolescence performing the identity of a soldier. She had spent her adult life performing the identity of a sailor. The only place she had ever been fully, openly herself, a woman who fought, who loved, who refused to hide, was the deck of a 12-ton sloop in the Caribbean. That identity lasted approximately 2 months before it was taken from her by a boarding party, a courtroom, and a fever. Anne Bonny's story ends differently, and the difference is itself a kind of mystery. There is no record of her execution. There is no record of her release. She simply vanishes from the official documents of Jamaica sometime after the trial. Some historians believe her father, William Cormac, paid for her release, that the wealthy planter she had defied, whose property she may have burned, reached across the Atlantic and bought his daughter's life. There is circumstantial evidence that an Anne Bonny returned to South Carolina, married a man named Joseph Burleigh, bore 8 children, and died in 1782 at the age of approximately 80. If this is true, and the evidence is suggestive, though not conclusive, then Anne Bonny lived another 62 years after that night at Negril Point. She would have lived through the 7 Years' War, through the early rumblings of the American Revolution, through the transformation of the Carolina colony from a frontier territory into a settled society. She would have done all of this as a respectable wife and mother, in exactly the kind of life she had spent her youth burning to the ground. The woman who set fire to plantations and stabbed servants with table knives and stole ships from harbor and fought alone on the deck when every man hid below. That woman may have spent her last 6 decades in silence, invisible, performing respectability the way Mary Read had performed masculinity. Because the world, in the end, always finds a way to make you disappear. What Anne Bonny and Mary Read proved on the night of October 22, 1720, was not that women could be pirates. That is the surface reading, and it is not wrong, but it misses the deeper architecture of what happened on that deck. What they proved is what happens when people who have never been given a place in the world find one briefly, imperfectly, on the margins, and then defend it with everything they have when it is taken away. Mary Read had been erased since birth. Anne Bonny had been fighting erasure since childhood. The deck of the William, for a few weeks in the autumn of 1720, was the only place either of them had ever stood as themselves. And when Barnett's men came over the rail, they did not hide. They could not hide. They had spent their entire lives hiding, and they were finished with it. The men below deck had other options. They could surrender, serve time, possibly escape. For Anne and Mary, capture meant exposure, trial, and the gallows. But more than that, it meant the end of the only identity that had ever been truly theirs. That is why they fought. Not because they were braver than the men, because they had more to lose. Negril Point today is a stretch of Jamaican coastline known for its cliffs and its sunsets. There is no marker for what happened there, no plaque, no monument. The water is the same water, warm Caribbean blue, shallow enough near shore to see the sand beneath it. At night, when the tourist boats have gone and the beach bars have quieted, the point is dark and still, and the only sound is the water against the rock. Somewhere in that darkness, 300 years ago, two women stood on a deck and fought for something the world had never intended them to have. One of them died in a prison cell. The other disappeared so completely that history cannot say with certainty whether she lived to old age or was hanged and buried without record. Both of them are remembered. The 14 men who hid below them are not. Some legacies are not built by the people who win. They are built by the people who stand up last.